Each of them has an active economic development program. Craig Harms is our economic development officer. Many of you know him, and we're active in that area. We're also active in energy efficiency programs. We do, on the commercial and industrial side, do audits, customized audits. We have those for farm members as well. And we have a pretty extensive incentive and rebate program for our residential customers. So it's an area that I think is important for existing business. Listening to the panel earlier today, if you're talking about retaining and keeping existing business, certainly we want to have those businesses be as efficient as possible. Our emphasis overall, two key words which you'll hear me talk about and probably others, as an electric utility, two key emphases are reliability and affordability. For many people, affordability is the biggest issue. If you're a senior citizen on fixed income, you're probably more concerned about your electric rate than somebody making $100,000. But I think for industry and for economic development purposes, reliability is increasingly moving up the scale in terms of importance. The kinds of sophisticated businesses that we have today that can't afford even a second of being down in terms of reliability is a real challenge for us in the industry, and I think it's a critical component of economic development. Also, I want to mention that for Dairyland's perspective, we're different than the other utilities that are on the panel. They're regulated and controlled by the Public Service Commission. Generally, our governance is our elected board representing each of our member owners, our 25 distribution co-ops. Today, I'd like to touch briefly on 4 challenges that we face and the industry faces really in Wisconsin: power delivery infrastructure, EPA regulations, fuel and transportation costs, and the transition to renewable energy. As Jerry mentioned, the program said that we were going to talk about energy, and then it also slash Badger Coulee line. My first comment on energy infrastructure is, if you could see this map, the red lines are the current 345 power lines in this state. And even if you were in Electricity 101, you would realize that our corner of the state is missing in that area. And that's a large part of the explanation for why you're seeing the projects coming forward that have been introduced. Dairyland is a participant in the CapEx 2020 project. That project started as a Minnesota-based project, a statewide project, and one of those routes would come into Wisconsin, crossing at Alma and going somewhere down towards the La Crosse area. From our perspective, the CapEx project, there were 3 critical reasons that we wanted to participate in it. One is the reliability of the system in western Wisconsin and eastern Minnesota. Again, you can't stress enough the fact that reliability is moving up in importance for our customers, and we simply have to be sure that at all times the system is robust enough to avoid the problems that we've seen in other parts of the country. I was in Connecticut visiting family this fall when the Halloween storm hit Connecticut, and parts of that state were without power for 2 weeks in November. And part of the problem, frankly, in Connecticut is they don't do a very good job of maintaining their transmission system. A second issue for us with CapEx 2020 are the growth issues, and in particular the energy peak needs. Transmission is not just built on a daily basis, what we need today, right now, at 11 o'clock in the morning. You have to be prepared for the days when it's 97 degrees, and you have to be prepared for the days when it's 25 below. And it's that peak need that drives many of these discussions we're going to have today about transmission. Thirdly, moving renewable energy from Minnesota. There's incredible wind development occurring on the Buffalo Ridge in Minnesota. We are part of that. That's where most of our wind is located because the wind regime is so much better and stronger there than other parts of the Midwest. That has to have somewhere to go, and we have transmission constraints that are incredible in that region right now. And a major part of the whole CapEx project has been moving those renewable energies. When it comes to CapEx and Badger Coulee both, I think it's important to point out that it's not our decision ultimately what gets built. The Wisconsin Public Service Commission process will determine both the need, question, is there a need, and the route. And recently I've been reading some things about that process not being democratic enough or fair enough. I just point out that the Wisconsin Public Service Commission 100 years ago was an invention of the La Follette progressive machine, and it was viewed as one of the major progressive reforms in Wisconsin to take these decisions out of the hands of politics and also out of the hands, frankly, of the utilities, and give them to experts in the field and quasi-judicial determinations. So we're going to have to put up as a utility with whatever the Public Service Commission decides, and that is true both on the need question as well as the route question. Dairyland is not a participant in the Badger Coulee line. We've been briefed on it by ATC, but our future participation would depend mainly on what route, if any, were selected if that project moves forward. Let me talk about the second challenge for us, which is the cost of environmental regulations. This slide shows the average Wisconsin utility, 60% dependent on coal. As I mentioned, our percentage is higher at Dairyland because of our past reliance on coal. We are seeing environmental challenges to that existing coal fleet that are driving costs and impacting greatly our ability to keep our rates in a reasonable range. We're investing $400 million in state-of-the-art equipment at our existing plants. Our goal is reduction of particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, mercury, and nitrogen oxides. And we're quite a ways into that $400 million investment. But at the same time, the EPA is coming forward with even more regulations that we are looking at the impact of. You may have heard of the cross-state air pollution rule, which is a rule this past year that came out of EPA. We were looking in our system at a 7% rate increase just to implement the changes necessary for that rule in 1 year. The courts, however, have put that rule on hold and will be evaluating future changes on that. The utility MAC rule, which deals with heavy metals and mercury in particular, actually this is one case where Wisconsin, because of our state mercury law, we don't have as much of an issue with that particular rule. Cooling water intakes. Currently, coal-based power plants and nuclear plants do their cooling water out of rivers or lakes. There's a rule the EPA is looking at requiring the building of cooling water towers. Those are enormously expensive, probably $100 million per tower, per plant. Huge investment if that rule requires that. Coal ash. We have a good track record in Wisconsin of recycling our coal ash. Unfortunately, other states aren't as progressive in that regard. We had the TVA spill where there was an open pit storage space, and we are, as a result of that, seeing new rules, hopefully that will do what Wisconsin does in terms of regulation, but they may go further. And finally, the big unknown is greenhouse gas. What will happen in the future? Congress has pretty much stopped debating climate change and greenhouse gas, but EPA has not. So all of these regulations impact. The question is, how much money do you spend on 30 or 40-year-old plants? How do you keep them up to date? How do you keep them in a position where we can use them? The second major challenge for us are fuel and transportation costs. Our coal comes by rail, by barge. The costs of the fuel product vary, but the declining competition has really raised our rates in these areas. Dairyland is part of the Badger Cure organization, which is a group of about 45 Wisconsin businesses, ranging from the Wisconsin Farmers Union and the Farm Bureau to Kohler Company and a lot of the forest and paper product companies. We can't have competitive businesses in Wisconsin without competitive rail, and increasingly we don't have that. So that's an issue that we spend a lot of time on lobbying in Washington in particular. The renewable transition. I mentioned that Dairyland has changed a great deal. We've gone from 2%, under 2% in 2000 to now we're 12% renewable, which is quite an accomplishment over a 10-year period. Nationally, cooperatives are 11% renewable. The entire electric industry overall is about 9% nationally, although most of that nationally is hydro. And as you saw from our list of renewables, we have a lot more variety and are looking at a lot of different things. Renewable has its benefits, certainly, but it also has its challenges. A major challenge is the cost of construction of renewable resources. Wisconsin has a 10% mandate right now on renewable. If we went to 25% as a state, we'd be looking at adding $1 billion of renewable energy in terms of construction costs over whatever period was developed. That $1 billion would be a real addition to what we already have in our system. Reliability is certainly always an issue with renewables, and I think you're seeing utilities very comfortable with the idea of getting to 10% renewable, maybe more than that, but there are reliability issues, particularly with wind and solar. And I don't need to explain that on those days when it's 25 below and our energy needs are the highest, if the wind is not blowing, it can be a challenge for us. So you end up having to build backup facilities for those days when the renewables are not usable. Now maybe someday batteries will resolve this or other energy storage measures. We're not there yet. And probably the biggest challenge right now for renewables are the low market prices for energy. Because of natural gas being so low, the MISO marketplace prices have been just abysmally low. We've been shutting down our plants much of the time, buying on the market, and that has hampered the development of new renewables, because while renewable energy is cheap in terms of fuel, it's not cheap in terms of capital in construction. So in summary, we face a lot of challenges. Those challenges affect affordability and reliability. Welcome your questions and the discussion we have afterwards. I think it is necessary for the economic growth of our region to meet these challenges, and we look forward to working with you on them.
My name is Mike Herro. I'm the area manager with Xcel Energy in La Crosse, and I'm also in charge of our account managers in the state of Wisconsin. And that group serves our largest 250 customers in the state. Today, what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about Xcel and our background, talk about trends, and then maybe just future needs and how we're going to address those trends. Just a little bit about myself first. I'm a degreed engineer from Madison. I've been with Xcel for 24 years or so. Prior to that, I worked for a train company as a facilities engineer. Our site in La Crosse is, we've got about 130 people in La Crosse with our French Island plant and our service center. So I work in a small area. I love working in western Wisconsin, but I'm employed by a very large utility in the United States. We're actually in 8 states. We serve almost 2 million gas customers and 3.4 million electric customers. We have our northern area, which is parts of Minnesota. We serve the Minneapolis metro area, parts of South Dakota, North Dakota, and then in Wisconsin here. In Wisconsin, we serve from about Europa, DeSoto area, all the way up to Lake Superior. And we're very intertwined with the co-ops that Brian mentioned. We serve 222 communities in those areas. I always refer to it as Swiss cheese in this part of the state. We're the holes, the co-ops are the cheese part, where we're just we're intertwined all around in western and northern Wisconsin. In this particular area, we serve Sparta and some of the smaller communities. We serve, like I said, La Crosse, West Salem for natural gas, or for electricity. For natural gas, we serve the La Crosse metro area. We also serve Fort McCoy. We do not serve Sparta. I'm going to talk a little bit about natural gas in a few minutes as far as how it serves Monroe County area here. I'm really proud of our leadership and innovation in many areas, renewable type things. Our company has been a leader nationally for wind power. We're the #1 wind power provider. Like Brian mentioned, most of our wind power, most all of it is on the western side of Minnesota, in parts of the Dakotas. We've got some wind farms also down in Texas now. We're also the #1 renewable energy provider in Wisconsin. We're the 4th or 5th largest investor-owned utility, but right now we're the leading renewable energy provider. In Wisconsin, we have 19 hydro plants on Flambeau and Chippewa flowage rivers. And we also have 2 renewable plants, one located in La Crosse that burns wood and refuse-derived fuel, which is your garbage, and then we separate it out to the paper and plastic, we burn that. And then also up in Ashland, we have our Bayfront plant is a renewable plant. We are, and this one's surprising, but we're the #4 transmission provider in the United States. Brian mentioned there's only 3 in Wisconsin here, and we're one of those 3. Solar capacity, we're #7. Not hardly any of that is in Wisconsin, unfortunately. We just don't get enough sun up here, but we do have operations in Colorado and New Mexico. We also have a program that was just introduced in Wisconsin a couple years ago. That's even some of our larger customers have enjoyed this program. It's called Wind Source, where you pay a little bit more on your bill, but then the next block of energy that we go and purchase or build is wind energy. And we've done all this with also keeping our rates down. Next, I just want to talk a little bit, I don't have a slide for this, I just want to talk a little bit about the trends that I've been seeing the last few years, and I've been in the utility industry a long time, worked with a lot of our largest customers. What I've seen is some slightly slower growth, but still there's growth out there in the last couple of years, and what I see in the future is that growth will continue, particularly, and I know we talked about it a little bit in some of the food processing areas. We've seen continued growth. We've got some large customers up north that continue to add onto their plants. We set in NSP Wisconsin, we set a new system peak this past summer, and we didn't really even have that hot of a summer. We're a summer peaking utility. When it's 100 degrees, that's when our generating units are working the hardest. We're also seeing some increases due to sand mines. I'm going to have a slide on that in a few minutes here, but we have at least 10 mines in our service territory right now, and probably another 5 or 10 that are wanting to come into the service territory. And those sand mines require both electricity and sometimes natural gas to operate. Another trend I'm seeing is, I think, not only with our utility, but many utilities now, is our infrastructure is aging. And this has been one of the points I've been making, is we've been going to all the meetings, and Brian and I have been to many of them regarding the CapEx lines. We haven't had in this region a new large transmission line in probably 30 or 40 years, and yet our population and usage has continued to grow. Xcel is planning on major expansions in the northern area and in our southern area for transmission growth in the next few years. A few trends on natural gas that I see, and I think Brian might have mentioned this, but natural gas, I think the numbers are, at one time we had about a 40 or 50 year horizon as far as the capability of supplying natural gas in the United States. Now with different types of horizontal drilling and the frac, that's where the frac sand comes in, that has been expanded out to, I think, 150 years. So natural gas has really changed as far as the future outlook of energy in our country here. And it continues to be the fuel of choice for homeowners. You know, we don't serve every community with natural gas, but the ones we serve, if you're faced with electric heat, propane, natural gas or oil, natural gas is by far the best choice. It's also being used a lot more in energy supply. You can permit and get basically what there is a jet engine that runs on natural gas. You can get those permitted a lot quicker than if you wanted to build a new coal plant in the United States or a nuclear plant. This is a slide I had. We talked a little bit about sand mining, and I'm sorry, I don't know if you guys can see with this thing here, but I don't know a lot about this slide, but I know that this is, thanks Dan. This is a slide showing where the ideal places are if you wanted to go into the sand mining business in Wisconsin. This fits real well with our service territory, which can be good and bad. I mean, it's been really hard to keep up with the demand. Our service territory runs from basically down around here in the La Crosse area up through Ashland, so it's in this general vicinity here. These mines, when they come in, and these developers, when they come in, they want to move fast. They want infrastructure set up. They want to get mining as soon as they can, and that has made energy engineers jump a little bit. We've had to put on some major projects in a short amount of time. I mentioned a little bit, one other thing on a couple of things on natural gas. This area here in Monroe County is served by what we call the Toma Lateral, and that is a large pipeline that comes, it's owned by Northern Natural Gas, and I think it ends around Toma area. It serves Fort McCoy. It comes from the Mississippi, so it travels out to the east. Meaning lateral means that it just stops. It's not a loop system. So that is one area that, for this particular area, if we had a lot more natural gas demand, we have to go back as the distribution network. We have to go back to Northern Natural and say, we need you to put more capacity, raise the pressure on this pipe. So that is one thing as we continue to look at economic development opportunities that we have to keep in mind for this region. The last thing for natural gas I wanted to mention, I know it wasn't on our agenda even to talk about gas, but I think it's important. I think you're going to see a big push for compressed natural gas and liquid natural gas vehicles and trucks. Now that we have this long supply out there, stable prices, I think you're going to hear some things very soon regarding those trends. Want to talk about, so those are the trends, just a couple things on the future need. Like I said, Brian already talked about this a little bit, but before I get into transmission products, Xcel Energy has, we've converted over 2 plants in our Minneapolis area from coal to natural gas. We continue to look system-wide at shutting down some of our old coal plants that are inefficient and would require millions of dollars to upgrade. Instead, we're concentrating on natural gas, wind, and our efficient coal plants. This slide here shows a little bit, I know you can't see this very well, but those lines represent some future plans that we have for potential projects in our region. It's a very reliable way for us to build these transmission lines rather than try to site a new power plant. Brian mentioned the CapEx project is really a consortium of utilities. And these are some of the ones here. WPPI is a state utility that serves municipal customers. Dairyland's on there, Xcel, and then quite a few Minnesota utilities. This here is the CapEx project really talks, this slide here talks about the Group 1 project, which is the phase 1 of that billion plus dollar effort. I know this is very hard to see, but on the bottom purple are the lines that when you hear people talk about the Hampton, Rochester, La Crosse lines, that's sort of the array of possibilities there for these transmission lines. And service dates are out to 2013, 2015, somewhere in there. The La Crosse, the need for La Crosse reliability is really based on the need for 22 substations, which include substations in Monroe County. What we have to do is we have to plan a system, and these system plans take 10 years to actually implement. We have to plan a system so that on the hottest day, if we lose one or two lines, that we can still provide power to everybody without having to do rolling blackouts. That's really what this reliability part of the need for this project is all about, is to be able to look ahead into the 2020 timeframe and beyond, to be able to avoid having to do the brownouts and blackouts so we can maintain voltage in this area. So I'll be around for a while, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
I'm Bill Jordahl with Alliant Energy. It's good to see you this morning. And is this working okay? Okay. Well, first, I'm looking forward to the lunch and Tommy Thompson being the speaker. I work in Madison. I'm a government affairs manager for Alliant Energy, and I work in Wisconsin's legislature, and I also work in Minnesota. We are a 3-state utility company. One of our utilities serves a large part of Iowa and a very small part of Minnesota, southern Minnesota. And then we were formerly Wisconsin Power and Light here in Wisconsin, and that went into Alliant Energy in the late 90s when the merger happened. But getting back to Tommy Thompson, he's who first hired me in Madison when I first went to Madison, so I learned all about the assembly and the milling crowd of 99 people all talking and milling around, and yet decisions kept coming out of that body. And he taught me how that worked and how to write amendments and things like that. And I recognize some of the legislators, former legislators. I think John Bettinger is here somewhere from La Crosse. I recognized him from back then, and Brian Root was in the Senate. So to the topic at hand, Brian and Mike covered a good deal of the overview of issues common to utilities and kind of the common things that we all think about and have to respond to. I'll echo what Brian mentioned. Utilities have as a commitment to affordable and reliable power. And I'll expand on that just a little bit. Affordable, everyone can understand that. That can be challenging when you are faced with fuel costs that might be going up. In our case now, we're seeing natural gas prices going down, and it looks like they will be down a while, and for other reasons as well. We're, as an industry, moving towards natural gas to generate power. A few years ago, that would have caused major concern for, I think, a lot of homeowners with their heating coming from natural gas and what that might do to prices. But now that natural gas supplies are growing so quickly, it looks like utilities going to natural gas for power production may not have that significant effect overall in the market. Prices, given the supply can be contained, I think, should be manageable. The utilities are going to natural gas. I think Mike alluded to this. A lot of the pressure is coming from environmental regulations and also an aging coal fleet. Alliant Energy has been closing some of its oldest. We had a plant in Dubuque, Iowa that's 90 years old. That's a very small coal plant, but it had been running all this time. And we finally decided to close that down. And utilities in general are going through that right now. They're looking at all of their coal fleet. They're looking at all of their old power plants and deciding which ones should stay open and which ones will we, a lot of them will involve retrofitting for environmental purposes, which will we keep going. And then where will we build? We will have to build some power plants probably. So that gets worked into the mix with affordable but also reliable power, because every time you turn a switch on, every time a business starts up machines, that power has to be there. We are required by law, really, to have power available for you. That becomes a real challenge, as mentioned, with those peak power days where either in the summertime the temperature is soaring, manufacturing plants are going and air conditioners are going, or sometimes actually in the wintertime, some of the coldest part of the winter when all the heat, the blowers on the heaters are going. That can cause high power demand as well, but the real peak times are in the summertime. And we have to keep that power there for you, but we also have to have high quality power with high technology, sophisticated production techniques that require energy that is, I'm not a physicist, so bear with me. The power flow has to be uninterrupted, even in terms of milliseconds, microseconds. And that's how sophisticated the power supply is becoming. The need for it is becoming for some industries. I'm going to switch now into kind of what utilities have to offer in terms of economic development. That hasn't been gotten into as much, and I thought I could add to that a little bit. If you, when the economy is booming, utility energy use is also rises. When the economy goes down, the utility energy use goes down, and it's almost a one-to-one correlation. We, as a utility, I think in general, I can speak for them, have economic development specialists. We have people who work in the field with the regional economic development agencies. Seven Rivers Group, I think Alliant actually helps support them a little bit. We work with local chambers. We work with any business that comes to us with questions about energy use. And economic development is either attracting new businesses, it is helping businesses that are there expand, or it is also, and a lot of people forget this, or at least there's a lot more going on with business retention than you might think. I'll start with retention because that's actually some of the programs that we have. We have something called an economic development rate, which allows discounts in very select circumstances to businesses that either want to come to our service territory or expand or are talking about leaving. Now, the biggest example was Mercury Marine, and that's where the economic development rate came from. There was a very large package of incentives, and we contributed to that package of incentives. For a utility, that's a sensitive issue because it is offering a lower rate for even a temporary amount of time to a customer. And so that rate varies a little bit from what everybody else is paying in that same rate class. In this case, it was a large industrial. The consensus was that keeping Mercury Marine was important enough to allow a discount like that. Now, it's a temporary discount. The highest amount of that discount is the first year, and it declines over the next 5 years. So it went into effect last year, so that discount will continue but shrink over time. And we ran numbers showing that had Mercury left our system, the impact on rates for everybody else would have been worse. That's part of the problem with downturns in the economy. You've got fewer customers using less energy, but our costs as a utility are the same. And so it's like property taxes. You've got these costs that have to be covered. And when the economy turns down, that's one of the reasons why I think we all share an interest in, since we share an interest in low rates, we also can appreciate that having economic growth helps the utility customer as well as the utility. Retention can also happen, though, if you help a business stay more productive, and that's our other major program called Shared Savings. And it's an energy conservation program, but it has significant economic benefits. We consult with businesses who are interested in using that program. We give them expert energy advice. We don't have a stake in selling them anything. And we help them install and finance new production equipment typically, or more efficient lighting if you're a commercial operation. And the payback, we help provide lower rate financing, and the costs to us are paid back out of the utility rate. The customer saves money, and for that period of time when the payback is taking place, his rates or her rates do not drop, and we calculate how much is needed to pay back, and so that customer is using less energy but still paying the higher rate, and so we recover our investment, and within 2 to 3 years typically the customer is then free of that investment and is not only more productive in terms of making their product, but paying less in energy bills. That is a major part of retention in a changing economy when a company is able to adapt, become more productive. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen in this economic downturn, that a lot of companies have kept their operations going to some extent, but they've focused on becoming more productive. That has not helped hiring people. And in fact, there have been, as we all know, the employment has lagged significantly, and a lot of people it's lagged for so long that they're not even looking for work right now. But one silver lining in that cloud is that those companies have stayed in business, and many of them are doing things that will make them, we hope, more competitive in the future, so that when growth returns, they'll start hiring again. Those are the main things that we do, along with all of our, we help companies that want to locate or expand, find facilities that are already on the electric system so that the costs of hooking up are much less. We have a catalog, and we use the catalogs of others who also maintain these. A lot of the local agencies, development agencies, do this in terms of empty facilities that are ready to go, that might be good for a business. And we work with the state, we work with local development agencies, and we do a considerable amount for economic development. In closing, the last thing that we do, and we're facing this, and I think a lot of employers are probably facing it, either young, untrained workforce or older and aging workforce. For Alliant Energy, we calculated it last year, about 45% of our employees are over 50 and have more than 10 years experience, which means they're eligible for retirement. A lot of them don't take retirement till 60 or later, but and some of them are deferring that now because of the economy, but it's a concern. I mean, it takes 5 to 7 years to become skilled enough at working at a power plant to run the operate the plant and work at the control panels. It takes a long time. It takes years to develop the skills for being a lineman even. I mean, it's a highly dangerous occupation. It's extremely risky, and it takes a lot of training and a lot of time. We, in our situation, are doubling people up, new people with, they follow around existing employees. It's kind of an apprenticeship program in a way, because the economy turned down and we ended up feeling that constraint too. We have had to scale back on some of those plans, and become much more targeted in what we do in terms of training. But we also work with the local voc ed, the voc tech system, schools in our area, our service territory. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges. I think finding young people who are interested in pursuing our professions, from nuclear engineer to Alliant doesn't have nuclear plants now, but from nuclear engineers to electric engineers of different kinds to linemen. I think the economy, another silver lining maybe, is now turned down, so that a lot of people are saying, hey, I better start looking for jobs that I didn't think I might be taking. And so they're opening up again to a lot of people for a while going to college and then finding themselves not real prepared. I think now they found themselves not real prepared for a lot of things that might be available in the market. And I think now that the economy is sending the signals, obviously, given the downturn, there'll be that these are the kind of jobs that will be coming in the future. These are the kind of jobs that you might want to think about starting to get ready for. I think that covers my talk, and I'll leave it to Charlie now.
Good morning, Charlie Gonzales. I'm with American Transmission Company, ATC. When I was asked to come and speak to you this morning, I was a little surprised because we normally are the forgotten utility since we have such a small role in the whole industry. But I was pleased to come because we do have some work here in this area, and you may have heard of it. I'll get into that in a little bit. But first, a little bit about American Transmission Company. We were created in 2001, so we are small compared to the other utilities, and we're new compared to the other utilities as well. And so we were the result of some legislation signed by the governor to allow the utilities in Wisconsin to divest their transmission business. They kept generation and distribution, but divested transmission to create the American Transmission Company. So they didn't give the transmission lines and substations free. What a shocker, you say. They got the complementary amounts of shares in ATC when they did that. So, but a board was created with representation from each of the utilities that were not weighted, because we are an independent utility at that point. But they are also our owners as well as our customers. So our customers become a very small group of people, of organizations. And you don't get a bill from us. You get a bill from Alliant or Xcel or Dairyland. But embedded in your monthly bill is about 7 to 10% of that monthly bill that's devoted to transmission. The rest of the bill, a lot of that is, as you've heard before, is the cost of generating the power. That's really the bulk of what the cost is. And so our cost is small. Our footprint in Wisconsin is really the eastern part of the state, gets into Monroe County, if you want to think roughly about up to Sparta and east, and then you go north and south from Sparta, and that's really the ATC service territory or footprint. And since 2001, we have built and maintained the transmission system that we have today. We started with about 480 substations and 8,900 miles of transmission line. Today we have about 515 substations and about 9,400 miles of transmission line. There's about 500 miles of new transmission line that was added in the last 10 years. That's a lot of additional transmission lines in that short period of time. So we've been busy in that small period of time, and we've basically taken care of and really looked hard at the footprint that we have in terms of the service territory. And we do have lines in the Upper Peninsula, one line that goes into Minnesota that we own and operate, and another little piece into Illinois. But it's mostly Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Now, during that same period of time, we've invested about $2.5 billion to create those new lines and also to maintain and improve the existing transmission lines. You know, they get old just like other things, and you have to replace them, improve them, repair them, and we have not neglected that. Now, every year we do a 10-year assessment looking forward. We get the projections of load demand, electric demand from all the utilities. We put that into our analysis, and then we look also regionally, as in outside the state, and we ask the simple question, will the transmission system hold up to what is looked out to over a 10-year period of time? And if the answer is not so well in some areas, that's how projects are created. So every year we do that, and that report comes out in October. This is a summary of that. It's available on the internet. It's a very public document, but it really tells you what we're looking at over the next 10 years, and you'll see it. This particular one that came out in October of this past October is very useful, I think, because it talks about some other issues besides just the immediate projects that are going forward. But a year ago when we did this same study, we were looking 10 years out and seeing about $2.5 billion that we would have to spend over 2 years. This report in October is $3.5 billion. A lot more is anticipated going forward over the next 10 years. Now, what's magic about 10 years? From beginning of a project to the end of a project, like the Badger Coulee project, can take 8 to 10 years. So, you know, even if the electric demand is a 1% growth demand a year, you know, after 10 years, that sounds like 10% to me. That's a simple little math there. Well, if we waited 10 years from now to start a project, we'd be very late. So we have to project, we have to look out 10 years out. And that becomes a little bit of a complicated issue as it relates to whether there's a need for a project. But that's really what we have to go through, and there's some established ways of doing that. Subject to criticism, challenge, definitely want to look at it. Especially when we know in the recession there's less use of power. But the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, which controls the construction projects that we do in Wisconsin, we get our tariff, or our rate of return, from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That's a federal determination because transmission is not just a statewide kind of activity. And so when we look that far out, we produce projects. Well, in this particular area, there have been a couple of projects that we've done. Every once in a while, a utility will say, we need to put a substation in a location to provide local service to a local area. Alliant, for example, needed to put in a new substation near Warren, right here. Well, our job is to provide a transmission line to bring power to that substation, which it needs to operate properly. We went to the closest source for a high voltage transmission line just north of Toma, and built about a 7-mile transmission line that runs along the interstate. That would be on the west side of the interstate. You'll see some simple little wooden poles along there, and that provided power to that substation. There's another project that goes between Sparta and Toma with Dairyland. They own a line, a 69,000 volt line. We recognize some voltage problems in that area. In that transmission line, we have an arrangement with Dairyland, and this project is at the Public Service Commission waiting for approval. We will rebuild that line, maintaining the 80-foot easement that's there now, but then adding a new 161,000 volt line on top of it. So there's going to be 2 circuits. Well, that will improve the voltage problems that we see dramatically. Now, we ran into a little snag, and we're working through the details are very important on these little projects. And we're working through that, but we hope to break ground this year still to get it in service within a year and a half. We'll see how that works. But even though it's a rather non-controversial project, there's some details that make it kind of interesting. Now, as I say, our analysis produces bigger projects from time to time. And so we have one called the Badger Coulee project, and that's basically a new 345,000 volt line. We know the endpoints, and there are two substations near Madison, the North Madison substation and the Cardinal substation, which doesn't exist but will exist by next year, middle of next year, about this time actually. Building that one now for another project that's going to end at that point. That's a new 345,000 volt line where there is none between here and the Little Cross area. Now, when we start this, it takes us, it won't be in service till 2018. It takes us a couple of years to get this done because we do not shortchange the public involvement phase, which is what we're in right now. Just by show of hands, I'm curious. We've had 2 rounds of open houses. We've had 16 different open houses in this area. By show of hands, who's been to any of those open houses? Well, that's a shocker. There's quite a few of you. Thanks for coming. Now, the next phase, right now, we're looking at potential corridors. As you may know, if you came to the last round of open houses, many miles of potential corridors. They're all about 3,000 feet wide. It's not going to end up being that wide, but we're looking at that now. In the last 2 weeks of April, coming up, we're going to reduce that dramatically. You will see far fewer routes. That's our job, is to keep reducing it until we get to a couple of routes, 2 or 3 routes that we'll submit to the Public Service Commission about this time next year. Well, the next open house that we'll have, the last 2 weeks of April, you'll see we'll have far fewer routes. We're looking at about 900 miles now compared to, I think we lopped off about 13 or 1,400 miles, what we're looking at before. And we have to document why we're not using routes, and we have to document why we're using routes. Because if you end up having your property on one of the 2 routes that we submit, that the PSC has to decide on, you probably will want to be very creative about why we should have gone to the other routes. And that's a normal process. So we really fully document why we're not using certain routes as we go along. Now that entails us actually walking visually, using a lot of aerial photography, etc., to work this out. And we have had about 4,000 people come to these open houses, besides the ones of you who have attended. That's a lot of people. We encourage people to give us written comments. We've gotten a couple thousand written comments. We read them. Those comments all go into the Public Service Commission as part of our application, and we provide them when we do file the application next year. The way we read the applications is, the comments that we receive is as we're going through the routing and siting process and we're looking at a certain stretch of a route, we have a way to know who has given us a comment there. We then, as a project team, which is 20 to 30 people, we stop and read the comments for that particular segment that we're focused on at that moment. So sometimes there's a couple, sometimes there's a whole gang of them. You can tell, like, the neighbors must have got together there and decided to all write it. And that's a normal process also. So we do read them all, but they also fundamentally go into the application. And then we submit the application. We'll have 1 more round of open houses before deer hunting starts in November. That will show to you what the routes we're submitting to the Public Service Commission for the Badger Coulee route. That goes into the PSC. They will take 4 to 6 months to decide whether the application is complete or not. It's all public at that point, of course. The application is there electronic. You get hard copies in the libraries and in the clerks of all the local municipalities. You can take a look at it, study it, comment on it, continue to comment on it. But then after they declare the application complete, they have a year, thank goodness there's a deadline to this, where they decide whether there's a need for the project and what the route is. We don't. PSC does. That's their job. It's a statewide, it's a state decision, and they do. And we provide lots and lots of information for that. So just touched on Badger Coulee. I think that's all. Get some questions we'll have to deal with, and I'll be around if you get some detailed questions.
First question, and I'm not going to direct this specifically at any panel member here. I'll kind of leave that up to them on who wants to take it. you see a growth in pipelines in the state, i.e. Enbridge in Wisconsin, and how does this affect tourism in Wisconsin? Kind of a broad question.
Is this okay? Just can't hear it up here, but as far as Enbridge goes, we do serve some of their pumping stations up in our northern territory. Just a couple of years ago, they built a new pipeline down through the state of Wisconsin that I believe has quite a bit of capacity. So personally, I haven't heard of any new pipelines from them. The way I understand that, when you build a pipeline of that magnitude, they build it out to the future, and you can increase pressure and do different things on that particular pipeline. So I haven't personally heard of any new pipeline projects, and that wouldn't affect the tourism or anything that I can see there.
Thank you. This question is a little bit of a question on conservation versus building for more load. This question is always right in everyone's mind. I guess to put it real frank, can we conserve our way out of needing more capacity, more energy? Again, I guess if anyone of you gentlemen would like to take that.
I can give it a first shot. Conserving our way out of building new capacity, I strongly doubt that that's the only thing that can be done, or that will be successful in meeting demand. I mentioned before that there's a strong correlation between economic growth and energy use.
We can't hear over here. We can't hear.
How's this one? Is this better?
No.
Talk louder. All right, I'll talk loud. I was saying that there's a strong correlation between economic growth and energy use, and so America has, as an economy, it's in the interest of those who are using energy to conserve energy. A lot of energy, a lot of companies, for example, are doing their own energy. A lot of companies are, maybe I should use this or. It's in the interest, there we go, of American companies, of American consumers of energy to conserve energy. And so a lot of that's been going on now. And one way you can look at that is with emissions. Carbon emissions apparently in the US in the last 10 years have actually dropped a little bit in terms of percentage. Partly that's because the economy went down and less energy was being used. But also you can attribute some of that to the fact that the US economy has found ways to become more and more efficient at its production. I mentioned productivity being one of the things that energy users are concentrating on right now. That means you do more with less, including energy. Utilities are promoters of energy efficiency. We have that shared savings program I mentioned. But you know, it's a growing population. You look at all the things that we use electricity to for in our own lives, from iPods to cell phones to you name it, and you know, high-def TVs and TVs that turn on when you turn them on, they come on right away. All of those take energy, and all of our market trends and all of our choices are headed in that direction of consuming energy. I don't think energy conservation, I think that slows the use, and I think you can find ways to, for example, utilities are always making energy environmental improvements. Emissions have gone down. So environmentally, there may not be, just because you increase production of energy doesn't mean you're affecting the environment negatively. There are ways to try to manage that problem, and utilities have gotten pretty good at it. Anybody else want
just add a couple comments. I think, as Bill said, we have programs designed, and Dairyland, in our case, we go through our co-ops and offer programs and focus on energy, which many of you have heard of as the state major program in energy efficiency. And I think there's no question we're making improvements at people using energy in a much smarter way. But as Bill said, there are pressures on the other side that make it very difficult to restrain the growth. As he said, at a residential level, we all have more gadgets, more needs in our homes. I could cite the boom of ethanol plants, for example, for us was a major driver in increased load demand. Sand mines, likewise, are going to be a huge increased demand. We're talking about several megawatts for every plant that opens. What if this country moves fully to electric vehicles? There are some good, smart uses of electric vehicles, charging at, for example, nighttime when our loads are down. But the reality is there are always going to be increased demands put on the system, and we have to balance that. I believe part of the discussion the PSC has on need is looking at this question of load development and load growth. And I think it's a complicated thing, because as much as we try to push conservation, do energy audits, get our commercial industrial customers more efficient, we also have these other areas of growth.
Thank you. Next question here. I think all of us that have driven by the river, sometimes this comes to mind. Why are we not using turbines on the Mississippi River, other area rivers, as an alternate energy source?
I'll go a little bit into that. I know a couple years ago there was some proposals, and they may still be out there, to put microturbines at some of the dams along the Mississippi. Some of that technology is still evolving, and people have to keep in mind those dams are put in as a navigation dams versus a power producing dam. You know, we have more hydro facilities in the state than any other utility right now, but I can guarantee you we probably will never build another one. It's a lot of you have to take a lot of land to build a dam, and what we're trying to do is just relicense the ones we have, keep those operating going forward. So the other part of it is, I know up in Canada, Manitoba, they've really developed the hydro dam industry, and a lot of our utilities, including ours, a lot of the state utilities, get some of their power from those hydro dams up there. But I would say I'd be surprised to see any new hydro dams built in the state of Wisconsin, particularly in our service territory.
I could add to that. In Canada, there is more hydroelectricity suppliers. We've just announced last week a joint project with Minnesota Power to bring some power from Canada, a 55-mile line roughly, to Duluth, where there's a substation connecting a new transmission line that we put in service in 2008, I believe it is, and that transmission line is one of two today that come into Wisconsin. There's one in Eau Claire, and there's one in Duluth that comes into Superior and then down to Wausau. So this announcement last week is kind of a big deal, because it allows us to work with that utility to bring power, another source, into Wisconsin that way. We've also announced a few weeks ago, see, we're going a little bit outside the footprint, if you get that point, another hydroelectric facility in the western part of Canada to run a rather long line to the northern California area, because California has a much higher standard for renewable energy in terms of a percentage of fuel than Wisconsin does. And so they're using anything to try to meet that standard. So this will be a long line from Canada into northern Canada that we're exploring, that we're going to joint develop with another company. But Canada has sources for hydroelectricity.
Thank you. This next question is, I guess, geared toward the Badger Coulee line, and the question simply stated, is there a guarantee of carbon reduction from the Badger Coulee line? I guess assuming we're going to bring more wind energy in here. I always get kind of nervous when I get a guarantee, and I get nervous when I give one, but which you gentlemen would like to go first?
Sorry, I can't give you a guarantee either. But think of it this way. If you're on the interstate, you can't guarantee which trucks are going to move product you're going to use the interstate. Nobody can guarantee who's going to use the interstate. Really can't. You use the interstate when you want it. If you want to go to the Brewers game, you can use some roads other than the interstate. Probably makes more sense. That's why it's used. Same thing with the high voltage transmission line. It's available for all the utilities to use. They decide what they want to move onto it. We just know, and everybody knows, there's better renewable sources of power to the west of Wisconsin. Much better. The opportunity to get that into the state is what CapEx and Badger Coulee accomplishes. It's up to the utilities then to use those lines. We have found, of course, that whenever we do another interstate connection, the utilities use it all the time. Why would they do that? On the one hand, you've got a 1% growth in demand in Wisconsin, and the state says we have enough power generated in Wisconsin. Why would you go outside the state? The reality is, over last year, 86% of the time, power was imported into Wisconsin, despite those numbers. Why would you do that? Because it's cheaper. It's cheaper for the utilities to go get it outside the state to bring it in than to use the existing sources in the state. And you benefit from that. I mean, do you know where this power came from to put on these lights? I don't. It'd be a good guess, but it really, they're using the transmission lines to bring power into the state. Can't guarantee it's renewable, but it's likely.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question here before lunch. This next question actually was, three of them were very similar. As far as biomass, what's the viability of growing that as a technology versus some of the other fossil fuels?
Well, I'll start with that one. Jim Doyle, when he was governor, made a big fact of biomass being where Wisconsin ought to position itself in renewable energy, and to a large degree I agree with that. I think the reality is that solar, while it has appropriate applications for small residential things, commercial solar, we're not a sun state. Wind, we've just been talking about, is better in western Minnesota and Iowa. But biomass, we have so much potential in this state. We have a tremendous ag industry that offers a lot of potential. We have forestry, we have a paper industry, we have food and vegetables, we have all the ingredients to make biomass. And as I indicated, we've got a plant in Cassville that we're generating power, I'm sure today, burning wood. The challenges that biomass face are mainly ones at this point of cost compared to conventional fossil fuels. Number two, of transportation and storage, which has been a huge issue for us at Cassville. If you're going to have a large biomass plant, you need to obtain a pile of materials to have there to burn around the clock. And you can't just depend on a truck arriving today and 2 trucks arriving tomorrow. You need storage. The transportation costs, the further you need to truck it, are part of that challenge. So biomass has some challenges as it relates to wood and switchgrass and those sorts of things. There are also, some of the farm crops are very seasonal. You can't build a biomass plant on a crop that's only growing 4 or 5 months out of the year. You need to have some planning for other kinds of supplies. As it relates to digesters, I think they're going to be the face of the future of agriculture in Wisconsin, certainly large dairy farms. Almost all large dairy farms are incorporating digesters as part of their planning. not necessarily because they hope to get rich off the electricity, but because of manure management, odor control, all of the things that make it work. So I think Wisconsin has a bright future in biomass, but it is a challenging thing. It's not as simple as people think, given these issues of transportation and storage in particular.
I was just going to make a quick plug for our French Island plant in La Crosse. That serves the needs of La Crosse County and a few other communities, but I've always been amazed that that more communities in more parts of the state and even the country don't use that alternative for getting rid of their waste and the paper and the plastics. Since we've had the partnership with La Crosse County, we've avoided 5 landfills in La Crosse County. If you go into some of the European countries now, that type of refuse solution is mandated, where you don't hear much about it now. And we can do it in La Crosse, and we burn it with wood. We can do it in a relatively environmentally friendly way, and we're producing electricity. So, I haven't seen anything else out there recently to use that alternative, but there's a couple places in the state that do it now, but I'm really surprised that hasn't taken off more. And I would echo Brian's comments on the other biomass futures too.
I'll add to that real quick too. A couple years ago, you might recall, Alliant Energy had proposed a power plant in Castle, not a power plant, but a new generator there. There's one there now, and the proposal was to co-fire coal, but also a very significant component of that would have been biomass. And looking at 100% biomass was prohibitively expensive, plus all the supply issues Brian talked about. We wrestled a lot with all those issues. That was this was one of the first big-scale biomass proposals, and so we wrestled with all those things. Southwest Wisconsin, which is where Cassville is actually a pretty good resource area for a lot of wood. We also looked at switchgrass and started identifying a lot of the benefits, the side benefits, a lot of conservancy benefits, forest management benefits. The DNR, the Southwest DNR was very interested because of the forest land there. You could get a lot of the deadwood, you could do a lot with improving the forestry, the forest resources down there. But the Governor Doyle's Public Service Commission, so this was a PSC that, as Brian mentioned, the governor was very favorable to biomass. The PSC rejected that proposal. One of the big reasons was cost. Even at a 25% biomass level, the cost estimates for that plant were viewed to be too high at the time. And so it is a challenge. But for example, we did a lot of work in terms of helping to identify some of the real benefits and how some of that stuff might work. So progress was made, even though that plant was denied.
Thank you. That's going to take us up to lunchtime. I'd sure like to thank these gentlemen for coming here and taking time out of their busy schedules. Generating and delivering electric power or natural gas is a complex process, and I think we can all appreciate that a little more after the presentation. So let's have a round of applause.
Now, we'll feed you. You guys can eat.